Okay, this video is for Jeff and Steve on the WOODGAS forum. You guys have both had a couple questions about my gasifier pickup truck. So the truck itself is a 81 Toyota pickup, two-wheel drive, long bed. Started life out as a 22R 4-cylinder 4-speed. I have since swapped in a small block Chevy V8, 350 bored 30 over, Manley rods and guides. I don't remember the specs on the cam, but it's pretty lumpy, a little more aggressive than it should be. High compression pistons, running 9.5 to 1, Y-end intake, Holley 650. I did swap it over to a aftermarket HEI ignition system. The hotter spark helps with gasification quite a bit. Other than that, the motor is pretty normal. You know, just a solid little street motor making like 320 horse. Transmission, like I said, was originally a 4-speed. I swapped in a W55 5-speed out of a 3rd generation pickup. It's got a taller first gear and a taller overdrive, which is much more useful for gasification. And I did both of those long before I ever intended on gasifying this truck. I only got into gasification about a year ago, and this truck had been sitting for 3 years. After I had kids, I kind of quit driving it because it gets really expensive getting speeding tickets and buying tires all the time, because I originally built this truck to be nothing but a tire burning street menace, and it did that very well. So with WOODGAS, you have a reduction in horsepower between 25 and 30% is what's normally said. So the factory 22R only made 98 horsepower. I built that motor, got it up to about 140, and truck kind of became unreliable at that point. This motor's making, like I said, 320, right in that area. So if I lose 30% of it, whoop-de-doo. I still have more than triple the factory horsepower numbers. The truck gets up and goes just fine. So I'm gonna climb up the bed here. So I'll give you guys a rundown of the air passages and how it works. So right down here I have 2 bilge blower motors out of a boat. They draw 3 amps and they flow 350 CFM a piece, I think. Just above that I have a gate valve, like you would see. I can't really get a good video of it. There, you can kind of see it. That would be on your typical like spa for a water shutdown. And that is my air intake. You can see it's right down there, just facing at the floor of the bed, and I have a cable hooked up to it and a set of springs. That goes to this handle right here, which if I pull on it and loop it over top of the cooling rail, that valve is now open. That's my fresh air inlet. So drop that handle and it closes it, and the handle just hangs up right on the side of the hopper housing here. So I do have to be careful what I show, because the Wayne Keith gasifier, he does not reveal the secrets in how it functions as well as it does, due to you have to buy the book and join the forum, and then you get all the crazy details about the goods down in the guts in there. But his saying is what you can see from the outside is free information, so I'll give you guys everything I can. Gasification is the act of burning wood in an oxygen restricted environment. So there is no open flame. And to give you an idea, a visual representation, if you ever lived in a house that had a wood stove, late at night everybody throws on those big couple chunks and you got that nice bed of charcoal. Throw your chunks on, turn the damper all the way down. If you ever seen it, the flames will lift off of the log and they will hover in the top of the stove. So there's no flame actually connecting from the charcoal through the wood up to the flame. You're looking at gasification. The charcoal is hot enough that it's superheating the wood and it's off-gassing. Those gases are flammable, but they have to have oxygen to burn. That's why it raises up into the top of the stove where there is still oxygen getting through the damper, and that's where the flame exposes itself. So that's what gasification actually looks like. So in this exact instance, there is no open flame because I don't want to burn the fuel until I get it up to the motor. So the air incoming through those two blowers, and their only purpose is for warming up the system. When the truck's running down the road, those are not on. They just flow air freely and come in. Now, this barrel here is a heat exchanger and a drop box. The heat exchanger part of it, inside of this barrel, there is another barrel that is 8 inches in diameter and 2 feet long. And inside of that barrel, I have 2-inch wide fins that are welded radially all the way down through the bottom. And as the air in comes from here, it hits those fins, and those fins create a bunch of turbulence, and they make that air spend a long time in this system. Now, we'll get to it in a second, but there's heated gas in here. So that incoming air is getting preheated by the amount of time it dwells inside the heat exchanger. So that preheated air drops all the way down, and underneath here you can see there's an 8-inch crossover pipe. Inside of that pipe there is a 2-inch pipe that connects the heat exchanger to the fire tube inside, and that's where all the fire actually happens. You have to be kind of careful because the system's still hot, so I don't want to be, poking it and burn myself. Granted, this barrel, when it's running down the road, gets to about 400 degrees with the insulation that's in it. So you shouldn't actually burn yourself on it, but you don't want to touch it. It's warm. So that air incoming through the crossover pipe, getting preheated, gets into the fire tube. In the fire tube, there's a series of jets around all the way. And that incoming air that's preheated goes through that jet, and from right here in the lower barrel, this is the top of the fire tube. Inside of the fire tube is 18 inches of 12-inch diameter pipe that is filled with charcoal, and that charcoal is self-replenishing from the wood coming down through the hopper. So all the fire happens in there. Technically, I say fire, but there's no flame. That goes down the bottom and around the outside of this barrel and crosses back over through the crossover pipe, superheated. Now, the actual charcoal can be sitting anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 degrees in the fire tube assembly. The gas outcoming is anywhere, I don't have thermocouples on my system, so I don't know my system exactly, but most guys figure at least 1,000 degrees coming out of the bottom of the fire tube, and between 600 and 800 in the crossover, and by the time it gets up to here, it's only about 300 degrees. So all that heat that's being made by the charcoal is getting that energy put back into the incoming air. So the gas flows around the heat exchanger, and this is what we refer to as the drop box. Now, the reason it's called the drop box is that 8-inch cavity in that pipe, the gas is slowing down velocity. And once it gets to this large open container, it can slow down even more. Soot and char that is formed in the fire tube from the burning wood slows down velocity enough that it falls down to the bottom. And I've got a clean out underneath of there where I can get rid of that. I actually got a video showing a clean out process. You can check that one out. Now, once the air comes all the way up, or the gas technically at this point, it's dropped out a lot of its soot, and it comes out the side of the drop box right here through this pipe. And I have a flange here because the entire gasifier system can be dismantled for cleaning, repairs, whatever. That goes into the center post right here in the middle of the truck bed. this is where the cooling rails start. And I have a removable cap here so I can do cleaning. And all of my cooling rails are mounted with Fernco fittings so they can be quickly taken apart, disassembled to clean, because you will have a buildup of soot in the system. Now, that soot acts as an insulation, and in the cooling rack, we're trying to cool the gas down. So occasionally we need to remove that soot because it will insulate the pipe so much that it won't properly cool the gas down, because we need to have the gas about ambient air temperature before it gets up to the motor for it to burn really well. So in this center post here, kind of hard to see, but right there I have a temperature gauge, and I can see that through the back window of the pickup truck, and that tells me the temperature of the gas when it gets to the center post. My system runs between 300 and 400 degrees going down the road, and it likes to be at least 200 degrees before it will fire the truck up. So then, once the gas goes to the center post, it disperses through the cooling rails all the way around. And as you can see, I got clean out caps on each one of these so that I can clean the cooling rails out easily. I just shove a garden hose in there and wash it down. Now this cap over here, I have a Fernco cap on it. This one I can pull off and I can flare the gas coming. I can actually burn it right here to see how good my gas quality is. It's kind of more of a showmanship thing, I think. Like, that's how I show people that I'm producing gas that runs the truck. But I don't normally flare it off. It's not necessary. So, climb out of the truck so you can see how the cooling rails work. Just open out in the airstream, so as you're driving down the road, these are getting all sorts of wind and it's cooling the gas down. Now, like I said, at the center post, 350, 400 degrees. If I'm driving down the road, I can put my hand right here and hold this as long as I want. This will be warm to the touch, but it's not hot by any means. By the time it gets back to the back post, it's usually ambient air temperature. Now, because you're burning wood, wood always has moisture in it. I'll actually show you the wood that I am burning right now. I just carry around these feed bags, and this is just chunked up 2x4 material. It's about the average size of my chunks. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. That's my actual fuel that runs the truck. Now, this wood is currently sitting about 15% moisture content, and you need to get rid of that moisture to an extent when it's in the gasifier. And there's 5 different places that I pick up moisture in the system that comes out of the wood. One of them, you can see these funky looking tubes on the back of the hopper. So these are, as Wayne calls them, cooling tubes, and air flows through it inside of the hopper. And because these are out on the back side of the truck in the airstream, these get cooled down by passing air, and the hot air that's passing through it then condenses out a bunch of moisture. Now, in the hopper, here and here, there's a gutter system that picks up all of that moisture created in the hopper and in the cooling tubes. There's another cooling tube right there that connects the upper and lower gutters so that we can pick up all that condensation and get rid of it. Down in the truck bed, see that tank right there? That picks up all of the hopper juice. That stuff's actually pretty useful. It's a really good natural weed killer. So I save that stuff for that. Also, as long as I'm here, you can see there is a temperature probe that goes into the hopper. That tells me the temperature of the hopper. And this is a vacuum gauge. We'll get to those in a minute. Now, back here, now that all the wood has passed through the system, it's already shed all the moisture that it's going to in the hopper, but the gas is still moist. Now I know everybody's triggered by the word moist, but had to throw that in there. So once it gets back to here, it's ambient air temperature. There's still water in that gas, and it's going to start condensing out because it's getting down to the dew point. So once it passes through here, each rail drops through the bed on each side. That goes down to, oh, I can't see it. Well, there you can kind of see it. So there's another tank right there that picks up condensation. That tank I have to empty every day as it fills up with condensation from the system. So that tank sits right here underneath of the bed. Then 2 pipes come off of that, come up through the bed, up into the bottom of the hay filter housing. Now that is literally a water heater tank that I welded a barrel top on and a barrel bottom on, and it's packed full of hay. That hay is the only filter in the entire process. So moisture is being shed up to that point, and moisture will be caught in there as well, and I have a drain valve on the bottom that I can open up and drain that. As that moisture works its way up through the hay, there's still soot in the gas. That moisture sticks to the hay, the soot sticks to the moisture, and once enough moisture builds up, it naturally condensates and drains off and gets all caught in the bottom where I can drain it out. From that point, the gas rises all the way up to the top, and right here I have 2 spouts that come out, and this is my now filtered gas. Both of these pipes drop back down through the bed. One goes all the way over to the other side and follows the same route as this one, which travels straight down underneath the truck, runs along the rocker panel, then turns up inside of the fender. On this truck I cut the fender wells out to lighten up the front end, so it gave me lots of room to put this 2-inch PVC plumbing in. Comes up inside the fender right there, and it does the same on both sides. Then drops down a little bit right here, and this is what is referred to as the Slingshot Filter. Now, we've already shed off as much moisture as we can in the back of the truck, but there may still be some moisture in this gas. Now, anything that makes it up to this point, if it is heavier than air or heavier than the gas, it's going to drop down. Right here I have a clean out plug that I can pull and get rid of any moisture. Then anything that is not heavier than air gets snatched back up and runs through this PVC pipe over to the mixer box. Now, in the mixer box, it's nothing. It's completely open. This is an air cleaner that I modified. I made it smaller in diameter so it could fit within my hood cutout. Now, right here, I have a Chrysler minivan 3.3 liter V6 throttle body that I stripped everything off of, so it just acts as a butterfly valve. And I have one for that gas line, one for that gas line. Then I have an air valve there, same thing, and another air valve there. So what that does is when the gas is incoming, I have air incoming to the back, and it creates a swirling effect inside the mixer body, which atomizes the fuel very well. Then it gets dropped down inside of the carburetor, and when the fuel pump is shut off, it then uses the butterflies in the carburetor to actually control the throttle. These butterflies, for the air and gas mixture, I have these set up on independent control cables inside the cab so that I can set my air mixture and then just use the carburetor as the throttle when I'm running on wood gas. So I'll show you that real quick. So right here in the cab, the way I have this set up, air valve, wood gas, air valve. When I open up the wood gas lines, like so, now I can set an air mixture with my 2 air valves. And ideally you want 50-50. Depending on the state of your gasifier, that can change a little bit. Now, you can tune it by ear and where it feels the most powerful, but what helps is if you have a live feed O2 sensor. So you can watch your air mixture as it's coming out of the tailpipes. That makes setting your wood gas mixture much easier. Now, the HEI distributor that I showed you underneath the hood is also set up on a control cable so that I can change the timing. With the loss of horsepower that you have with wood gas, if you advance the timing, because wood gas is a slower burning fuel, you get much better efficiency. And that would be this cable right here, which I haven't mounted yet. I just haven't gotten around to it. So I can turn up my timing up to about 45 degrees of advance from inside the cab. Now, if I'm running on gasoline, I would retard the timing all the way back to stock, which is 8 degrees before top dead center. When I'm on wood gas, it's running at 45 degrees. And then right here, this is my hopper temperature gauge. And all that does is when the hopper is full of wood, it runs very cold. Mine runs about 80 degrees. When you start running out of wood, the temperature in the hopper raises. I can see it here. That tells me I need to pull over and refuel. Pretty simple. Also right here, this is my electric fuel pump. So when I start up in the morning, pump is on, I'm running down the road on gasoline. When I see my air mixture start running rich, turn the fuel pump off. The truck will be sitting like so at that point. And as I see it start leaning out, running out of gasoline, I will set my air mixture, make sure it's happy on the O2 gauge, and continue driving like nothing ever happened. Very simple. Now, for the warm-up procedure, you would pull the lid off, stick a torch down in, all the way down to the char bed, which, like I said, is right here, and light the char. Now, when you do that, you're going to have your air valve in the open position, so it's feeding air, and that's when you light it. Now, because that gas that's being produced needs to go somewhere, this valve right here opens up another spa valve, just like the one we have up there, that is on the rear condensate tank. So it's another port, comes off, the valve is right in front of it, it turns 90 degrees, and underneath of the bed, there is, see if I can see it here, there's another bilge blower, another bilge blower, and another bilge blower. So the way that those work, so when that valve is open, I then turn on this switch, and that turns on the 2 bilge blowers that are in line that is now pulling air through the entire system. That's when I light up. Once it's lit, I haven't finished wiring this yet. This is the wire for the 2 pusher blowers up there. Simply hook that up to the battery. Now I have 4 blowers running, 2 pushing air in the system, 2 pulling air through the system. So that's my typical light up, and the system is warming up. At that point, I will take and throw 2 bags into the hopper, and that usually fills the hopper completely up. And then I would turn off the pusher blowers, turn off the vacuum blowers. This one here is the 3rd blower right there, which actually is a reverse blower, pushing air back through the system, and that will purge the oxygen out of the hopper. If you don't do that, you might get a little puff on that lid. Now, it's something I didn't go over on the hopper. So the hopper lid is mounted on these springs all the way around. So if oxygen gets in here, like I said earlier, wood gas can't combust until it gets oxygen. If oxygen does get in here, this lid, being mounted on springs, will puff up and then set back down. So it's kind of a safety feature, because if this was like hard banded down like a traditional 55-gallon drum lid would, this would, well, kind of technically it would be a bomb. And you definitely don't want, you know, flaming hot charcoal flying out all over the place, especially when you're going down the road. That'd be kind of an interesting look in traffic. So yeah, that's what that purpose is. And also, forgot to mention, on the mixer box, you can see right there, there's another spring that holds the lid down. So this will actually act as a puffer lid as well, as a safety, so that you don't, you know, especially with me having that Holley 4-barrel, I don't want to have a backfire and knock the power valve out, because then I wouldn't be able to switch back over to gasoline if I needed to, which I have had to do a couple times. When I'm figuring out how the system runs, I can switch back to gasoline on the fly. So that would be the typical warm-up procedure, is with the air valve open, that valve open, pusher blowers and vacuum blowers running. Now at that point, I can peek my head in the cab and I can see that temperature gauge. Once it's at 200 degrees, I know that I can run the engine. So at that point, I will close down this valve, turn off the pusher blowers, turn off the vacuum blowers. Now the system is completely sealed off. Then I would go back to the cab. I know it seems like a lot of walking around, but this takes me about 2 minutes in the morning. And I will open up my 2 wood gas valves, and I will open up my air valves. Turn my fuel pump on, fire the truck up, start driving down the road. Then I would do my switch over that I already described over to wood gas. And when I get to work, turn the key off, close down both wood gas valves, reach back and close off the air valve. Now the system is completely sealed off from oxygen. It will starve the fire out, preserve the charcoal that's in it, and I'm ready to light up next time. The other thing, you can see I showed you, there's that temperature sensor, and then you can see right above it that vacuum line. That vacuum line goes to this water column gauge. That tells me how much vacuum is in the hopper. This vacuum gauge is mounted directly to that cooling rail. That tells me how much vacuum is in that rail. There's a ratio about, oh, what was it? I think it's 3-to-1 that you normally want to see between those two. And that tells you the health of your char bed in the gasifier. And it also tells you if you have any restrictions in the cooling rails. So these are just kind of like, I'll call it a health meter. And when it's idling, there is no vacuum on each. When I'm driving down the road is when it shows the vacuum. Now with wood gas, as you can see, so if there's a fire happening there, there's going to be some expansion of the air. But once it passes through the char bed, there is no oxygen in the system. So it almost makes it a negative pressure. There's very, very little pressure. That's why those gauges are in water column instead of PSI. I think it's 16 inches of water equals 1 PSI. So the amount of pressure coming through this system it's almost negligent. It doesn't even matter. So the engine has to be running, creating its own vacuum, and that's what actually pulls the wood gas all the way through the system and into the engine. So in that aspect, it's not like gasoline where you stab the throttle and you instantly have power on demand and you're burning tires. This is a very, imagine an old man in an 80s Buick driving down the road, just gentle as can be on the throttle. That's the persona that's put off about wood gas because of how slow it burns. But with this engine being high compression, it helps a lot. I don't think I have near a 30% reduction in horsepower. I think I'm more about 20. And so I can't hammer on it and burn the tires, but I've had the truck up to 70 miles an hour, no problem. And I normally cruise to work, if traffic's not bad, doing 50, 55. And yeah, it works great. So 2 of those bags fills the hopper. And if I have a good bit of hardwood in there, I can drive all the way to Auburn from my house in Eatonville and do that on 1 hopper load. So if I saw up 4 bags of fuel every day, I can commute to work basically for free. And that is the whole reason behind wood gassing this truck. It was too much money to drive it on gasoline, between always burning off the tires, having to buy new ones, constantly getting speeding tickets and reckless driving tickets because I was young and stupid, and especially nowadays having to buy gasoline for the thing. So I still, like I said, I do burn a little bit of gasoline for about a mile on my way to work and about a mile on my way home from work. That small block Chevy that on gasoline on its best day ever got 13 miles to the gallon normally gets about 11. My last tank of fuel driving on wood gas, that American Muscle small block Chevy got 107.7 miles to the gallon. Yep, I like wood gas, and this will not be my last project. I have the V10 Dodge sitting at home that's going under the knife next. Thanks for watching, guys.